Hello, hi, my esteemed viewers and listeners. You know that it is always my pleasure to be with you again in our epoch-making class. Welcome to Alfonso de Rothschild's Tutorials, a channel dedicated to helping all of us have a better grasp of the English language, especially in applying it to various fields of life. If you have been following the discussions in our channel, you will be aware that for some time now, our attention has been focused on English for the IELTS examination. And of course, English for the IELTS examination implies general English. So one does not have to be an IELTS prospect to derive benefits from the class we are currently having and those classes that will follow after this. English language in all its nature furnishes its learner to be able to express himself or herself in writing, in reading, and then in spoken English. And what we are discussing here today is primarily tailored to achieve these ideals. On our immediate previous video, we analyzed the IELTS pie chart. Remember that the analysis of economic variables of a scientific or social scientific nature in the IELTS examination is something that everyone, irrespective of your social class, should have a knowledge of. To be able to group data and to indicate changes in data, either in the highs or in the lows, and to make comparisons where necessary, is knowledge that people from all walks of life, people in all segments of society, should aspire to have. Because the absence of it implies incomplete education in the ones that are involved. Data analysis using statistical models implies using models of statistical measurements like tables and graphs, charts, and bar charts and pie charts, line graphs of various kinds, pictograms, and statistical maps to measure values that we cannot otherwise present in details, especially when what is required are the summaries. When we do not enjoy the privilege that time gives, when we have to provide all the details necessary. Then what we are studying today is a part of that knowledge, to be able to present data in a concise manner, in a manner that enables one pick the most important issues at a glance. That is what this discussion is all about. Before we take a look at what we already have on the board, let me begin by giving us a brief rundown of the kind of skills one is expected to possess or acquire to be able to sit for the IELTS examination and do justice to line graph analysis in the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. First of all, in the first paragraph of the report that you write, on the basis of a model such as what you have on the board, you need to have the right kind of vocabulary. You need to have skill in paraphrasing ideas, because in this way you prove to the IELTS examiner that you possess enough vocabulary, sufficient vocabulary to be able to report issues using your own words. Let us take a look at what we have here. This is the caption of the graph. It says, number of people in Australia who bought a second-hand car from 2014 to 2024. In the first paragraph of your analysis, you are required to use words like show. The graph shows that the graph shows the number. The graph depicts the graph illustrates shows the graph depicts, the graph illustrates. The graph contains, the graph specifies. These are key verbs that enables you to express what the graph is all about. What does the graph illustrate? We say it shows the number. Number can also be quantity, number of something, or does it illustrate the percentage of a given value, or does it depict the fraction of a given number, a given value, a given percentage? Or is it talking about the amount of a value? Does it depict the amount of a value? Or does it specify the trajectory of anything? Words like this are to be used in the first paragraph, what you may call the intro of your analysis. Now, writing this kind of report, writing a report on the analysis of a given statistical model, the writing is often about changes in values, the highs and the lows. To be able to do this, of course, you need the right kind of vocabulary to express yourself. For instance, if there is a rise, of course, say there is a rise, for instance, a rise in quantity, or there is an increase. There is a jump in quantity, or there is a climb. Now, what if the rise or the increase is large? A large increase. Then you may use rose, past tense of rise, rose significantly. Quantities or amounts may rise significantly, or there is a significant increase. There was a significant increase, that is, reducing the adverb significantly to the adjective form significant to qualify the noun increase. There was a significant increase in the number of housewives who were prepared to take up a part-time employment if the government increases the allowance on such jobs. A significant increase, a dramatic rise, a dramatic increase, rose dramatically, that is dramatic increase, adjective, increase or rose dramatically, adverb. You can express yourself in these ways. There was a sharp increase, a sudden jump, climbed steadily. If the rise is or the increase of values is sustained, you could say it climbed steadily. There was a sudden jump in quantity if it happened suddenly. So these expressions are very important if you are reporting changes in values. What if the change you are talking about is not a positive one? That is, the change you are talking about is negative. Then you read the word fall, a decline in the quantity demanded of a commodity, a drop, a dip, D-I-P, a fall, a decline, a drop, a dip. The lows, compare highs. When you are grouping data, you are grouping the lows together, you are grouping the highs together, thereby making a fitting comparison. And if the drop was very much, you could say that it is plummeted. Quantities or numbers plummeted, nosedived, values nosedived, fell, decreased, fell or decreased, dramatically, exponentially. Prices, quantity demanded, amounts supplied, plummeted, nosedived, fell or decreased, dramatically or significantly, or it fell exponentially. What if there is a stability? What if there is a stability? a stability in values. Values didn't change for some time. You may use the verb stood at. Prices stood at a particular range for a period of time. Remained stable, stayed unchanged for a period of time, remained steady, quantity remained steady, that means unchanged, or it was stable. You could also say it stabilized. Prices, quantity demanded, quantity supplied, number of girl child attending secondary school, number of new boy child enrollment into primary schools, stabilized, remained steady, stayed unchanged, remained stable, or stood at a particular figure. What if the values rose to their highest point? Then you can say the values peaked or got to the zenith or reached their summit, or their apex, their apogee, their acme, their heights, the highs, and so on and so forth. Price peaked, that got to its highest point, the highest point possible, got to a peak or got to the zenith, or reached the summit, the apex, the apogee, the acme, the height, or the highs. If prices were rising and falling steadily and were not stable, or quantities or amounts, you can use the word fluctuated. It fluctuated. Values fluctuated. That means for that period, the rise and fall were erratic. A rise followed almost immediately by a fall, and another rise and another fall. Values are fluctuating. Values are erratic. So these are some of the vocabulary of statistical model analysis that we need to learn, not only for the IELTS examination, but for general use by learners and speakers and communicators in the English language. And now to the task at hand. Let us take a look at what we have on the board. Students of economics, students of the physical, social, and natural sciences should readily recognize this as a line graph. line graph analysis. In a line graph, one or more lines, like this, we can also call the line a curve. A curve. A line or a curve of this nature is used to measure the rise and fall, or the rise or fall of the values being measured. In our analysis today, we are talking about the number of people in Australia, who bought second-hand car from 2014 to 2024. So the survey period was a period of 10 years, spanning 2014 to 2024. The number of people in Australia who bought second-hand cars. A line graph can contain one curve, one line, or more. What we have here is an example of a single line graph. I will follow you. Or a single curve graph. As is the case with all graphs used for statistical data management, measurement, or presentation, there are some elementary facts about a graph that I need to quickly point out, especially in respect of some of our viewers who might be studying this area of knowledge for the first time. The graph has two sides of it. Two sides of it. Two sides. Two sides. This is horizontal and these are vertical. The letter X is here. It represents this vertical axis. They are called axis. This vertical axis of the graph. This vertical axis is called the x-axis. The x-axis is also called the dependent variable. I'm going to talk about what a variable is. Then there is the horizontal axis of the graph represented by the letter Y, and it's called the y-axis or the independent variables. I've already said that the y-axis of the graph represents the dependent variables, while the y-axis of the graph represents the independent variables. What are variables? Variables are values of an economic nature, variables of an economic nature that are capable of changing and which, as a result, are capable of being measured. Virtually everything in life that is capable, that can be measured in absolute units, is a kind of variable. So, on the x-axis of the graph, we have number of people. Of course, number of people is a variable because it is a value of an economic nature and is capable of being measured. And then on the y-axis, we have years. Years are also a variable of an economic nature because years are capable of being measured. The x-axis represents the dependent variables, while the y-axis represents the independent variables. Why are variables categorized as dependent and independent? It is because one variable depends on the other, while one variable does not depend on anything else. It exists on its own. For instance, the number of people, in this case Australians, who buy second-hand cars depend on the years, because it is as the years roll by that people or individuals are able to take the decision to buy or not to buy a second-hand car, and then to make the money required to do so. So the number of people who buy second-hand cars depend on the years. That is why the years are listed here under the y-axis, meaning they are independent variables, they are independent of the people, while the number of people here are recorded. Number of people are recorded under the x-axis of the graph, making them dependent variables. So the number of people depends on the number of years. Now let's take a look at the graph. In the first paragraph of the written analysis, the report, the writer or the candidate is expected to paraphrase this. After that paragraph, the second paragraph can, together with the third paragraph, be referred to as the body of the report. The body of the report, where the actual analysis takes place. Let us take a look at the graph again. In the second paragraph, the first body paragraph, the writer is expected to put in writing what he or she can see at the graph at a glance without having to quote figures or quote values in figures. So what can we see at a glance? What can be seen at a glance is that the number of people in Australia who bought second-hand cars in a period of 10 years was stable at first, remaining at 2,000 in a number of years. In the first 3 years, it remained stable at 2,000. But from the fourth year counting, the number rose steadily up to the peak of 6,000. So we can say at a glance, and this is represented by the graph, the line graph, which continuously rises till the end of the survey period. So at a glance, the graph represents a continuous rise, a steady increase in the number of Australians who bought used cars. After being stable for the first 3 years, from the fourth year, the number started increasing, and the increase was sustained till the end of the survey period. After saying this in the second paragraph, in the third paragraph, the analyst can now give a detailed analysis. An analysis that is accompanied with the figures and the years during which what happened and during which what didn't happen. Now to start doing this, we will write down the prompt. What's the prompt? The prompt is like the question. The prompt tells the candidates what to do with the graph. So this is the prompt. It says, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. These are the keywords. The candidate is to summarize. So what you're going to present is a summary of what the graph represents. Summarize the information contained in the graph by doing what? Selecting and reporting only the main features. And then, where it is relevant, you make comparisons. That is the task before us now. And so as we can see, the intro, we can call this the intro, and it says, the graph illustrates the number of Australians who bought second-hand cars in a period of 10 years, spanning 2014 to 2024. That is a paraphrase of the caption of the graph which we have here. After this paragraph, we will omit a line and start a second paragraph because what we are using is the block paragraph. So we omit a line and start the second paragraph. I guess you are following. If you have a question, please drop it in the comment section. If otherwise you want to reach me on WhatsApp, then drop your message or suggestion or your view or your reaction using the number 091 330 1790. 091 330 1790. Alternatively, you can reach me by email using the address Alfonso de Rothschild tutorial @gmail.com. So we now move to the second paragraph. Now, we take a look at what we've done so far. It is the second paragraph. It says, the number of Australians who bought second-hand cars remained stable at 2,000 in the first 3 years of the study. That is 2014 to 2018. Actually, the first 5 years, not 3, in the first 5 years of the study, that is 2014 to 2018. From 2018, that is from 2018, however, it rose steadily from just below 3,000 until it peaked. This is the peaking, the highest point, until it peaked at a little below 6,000 at the close of the study in 2024. In this second paragraph, we provide a more detailed analysis that includes the years and the actual number of people that bought second-hand or used cars in Australia in the period that we are studying. Now we move over to the third paragraph, where we still have further analysis.